The Intel 10850K. You're going to do an Intel build. You're probably going to get the 10850K, which is a very reasonable MSRP at the time that I'm filming this, Q3 2020. It's a little harder to find. It's like $450 at Newegg, but I've got a roll call for a build. So what do we got flanking our 10850K? Well, first, scythe. This is a very inexpensive tower cooler. This is the Ninja 5. It's not super loud. We're gonna ninja our way to reasonably good clock speeds on the 10850K. Because remember, the 10850K is a CPU that couldn't hack it as a 10900K. It's gonna be more limited overclocking, but this CPU cooler, more than adequate. Especially at stock, but even with a little bit of an overclock. For the motherboard, the Aorus Z490 Master. Hackintosher's motherboard of choice, but also pretty darn high-end. 14 phases digital PRM, 2.5 gig LAN. It is the Intel 2.5 gig LAN, so you gotta be careful because the drivers really matter a lot, because the first generation of the 2.5 gig LAN from Intel had some problems. ESS Sabre audio DAC, great for gaming, reinforced slots, physical M.2 armor. It's a hefty motherboard, optical SPDIF. This is an extremely high-end Z490 motherboard. This motherboard actually is a little overkill. I might suggest a lesser expensive motherboard from the Gigabyte lineup for your particular build, but I had this one on hand. For the case, Fractal Meshify C. It's compact. Now the Meshify C is a pretty good choice. This one was a great choice because it was on sale at Micro Center. It's a tempered glass side panel, and I guess because it's white, no one wanted it, but I like it. The black and white aesthetic, I think that works. Now, there's also the Define S2 Compact, which is a very similar footprint to this. So like if you put the two cases side by side, it's gonna be pretty similar to this one, except the Define C is a little bit longer. So that really the weakness of the Meshify is if you're going to run a radiator and you mount the radiator in the front of this case, it doesn't really leave you enough room for the GPU, in my opinion, if you're gonna run a big beefy GPU. They fixed that problem with the compact Define S2. It's a very similar internal layout, it's just got a little bit more room to breathe, but externally, the S2 Compact really is about the same size as the Meshify. It's really close. But we're gonna use the Meshify because it was on sale. For the power supply, I'm gonna use the Antec High Current Gamer 7. I've seen this one on sale at Newegg a few times. I had this one already, so I didn't have to pick this one up. It was just laying around not doing anything. 750 watts. 750 watts in the context of 400 watt GPUs. If you're thinking about getting a 3080 GPU from NVIDIA, 750 watts is the bare minimum. In fact, I would recommend probably an 850 or a 1000 because those peak power draws from that power supply are gonna be on the order of like 450 watts. And so this thing might not be enough. We may not be able to handle that 3080. At a 3090, not recommended. For the SSD, I'm going to use the SK Hynix P31. Yeah, that's the one that I picked up on Amazon, and it's not a bad little drive. This system is just going to be for testing. It's not going to have a huge number of writes written to the drive. Because that is a newer process flash technology, remember the SK Hynix drive has a little bit less endurance than even triple level cell drives, but the endurance is good enough. It's just shy of a petabyte. And you know, AMD has launched or is about to launch their new CPUs, so exciting times. I don't know anything about that at the time that I'm doing this video, so it's like, please sir, may I have some more Rocket Lakes? Come on, just do something, come on. Just anything. Oh my goodness, I'm gonna get so much trouble. I really can't say enough nice things about Scythe's installation kit or installation unit. I mean, they definitely could do it less expensively to save money, but they don't. And so like the peg system is all mostly pre-assembled and adjusting it is super easy. You know, some of these systems need like 2, 3, 4 bolts in order to bolt all this together, which, you know, other companies do as a cost saving measure, but I actually find this installation a lot easier. So you can kind of see a little bit when you get it installed correctly that it's gonna line up with the holes in your socket. All right, so in the accessory bag, you've got all the mounting hardware and the standoffs and everything that you need basically, so it's a pretty ideal setup. Now you're ready to screw down the tower cooler and you find, oh no, my screwdriver won't fit. Oh, Scythe's got you covered. I mean, this is a nice reusable Phillips screwdriver. These Scythe fans are called K's Flex 120mm fans. They're okay. It also comes with this 4-pin splitter if your motherboard doesn't have a CPU auxiliary 4-pin fan header, but this one does, so I'm not going to use it. When you're mounting your fans, be sure that one is oriented, you know, as an intake and the other one is oriented as an exhaust. You don't want to, you know, put your clips on the fan exactly the same way. And now it's just a matter of installing our fans, and then our memory, and then our M.2, and then installing the motherboard in the case, and there's quite a bit left to do. Now at the beginning I mentioned, hey, if you're gonna put a big honking graphics card in this case, you know, it's something to worry about. It's really just the cooler in the front. So like, I'm just got fans in the front. I did add an extra 140mm fan to the front of the case, so we'll have a little bit more airflow. But if I were to do, say, 240 or a 280mm radiator in the front, I've got less room for a really long GPU. So something like the 2070 Super, the 2080 Super, it's not gonna fit in that scenario. But where we're using a tower cooler with this build, it's going to work with pretty much any GPU out there. And that's pretty much all there is to it. Now the first thing that you do when you get your build put together and your Windows installed and set up and all that kind of stuff, or Linux, is do some benchmarks. If you're on Linux, you can use the Phoronix test suite. It's great. You should take a look at it. You can run your system through some tests and then look at other similarly configured systems and be sure that your system lines up to where it is or where it should be. There's lots of free games on Steam that you can use. If you've got, you know, Shadow of the Tomb Raider or Rise of the Tomb Raider, or you know, a lot of really popular games, like any popular games really, chances are there are benchmarks out there that you can use as a reference. So, you know, for the GPU that we've got in here, here's our benchmark result for Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and that is right in line with this CPU and GPU that we have. If you make a minor mistake building your system, like you don't put the memory in such that it'll run at a dual channel configuration, you'll see that in the benchmarks. Some utilities you run, it'll say, hey, your memory's not running a dual channel, so you need to rearrange your memory sticks to go with, you know, whatever your motherboard manual recommends to get it to run a dual channel. Or maybe you don't have the CPU cooler situated just right and your system turns off after it gets hot. Or you look at Hardware Info 64 and you see, hey, my CPU's running really hot all of the time, even when it's idling. Chances are you rolled a 1 on your thermal paste application, or something's not right with your CPU cooler mounting pressure. Just take it apart and put it back together again. Chances are you'll see what you did wrong. It's pretty easy to put a computer together. Just go slow, have patience. If you get stuck, come to the forum. We'll try to help you. But this is a great workstation build. You know, 10 cores, the 10850K. Even this cooler, this tower cooler, can manage a relatively modest 5 gigahertz all-core overclock. 10 cores, 5 gigahertz. I'll take it. So I'm Wendell, this has been a level 1 build. You can see from our benchmarks here, the specs for the system, everything basically lines up where it should be. I'm satisfied with this build. I'm signing out, and I'll see you later.